Imagine you have to arrange some learning for some colleagues or for the staff in your team or department. Maybe they need to learn to work with some new technology or legal updates. Maybe there are changes in the organization that require readjustment. How would you go about this? What resources and initiatives would you put together to help them learn? For most of us, our understanding of the context in which learning takes place is formed by the years we spend in formal education, at school or university. So when we are asked to prepare some learning for colleagues, it is maybe natural to arrange things in a way which resemble our own classroom experiences. A knowledgeable figure standing in front of a group of people telling them what they need to know. The learners take notes to help them remember the most important points. But what if these frames of reference, which we've carried with us since school days, aren't that well suited to learning as an adult? Malcolm Shepard Knowles was an American academic who specialized in the field of andragogy. He believed that adults' needs are different from children's or teenagers when it comes to learning. If we can understand these differences, then we can build learning experiences which maximize the chances of the participants remembering and applying what they had learned. Knowles' work was built on 5 key assumptions. Self-concept. Because adults are at a mature developmental stage, they have a more secure self-concept than children. This allows them to take part in directing their own learning. Past learning experience. Adults have a vast array of experiences to draw on as they learn, as opposed to children who are in the process of gaining new experiences. Readiness to learn. Many adults have reached a point at which they see the value of education and are ready to be serious about and focused on learning. Practical reasons to learn. Adults are looking for practical, problem-centered approaches to learning. Many adults return to continuing education for specific practical reasons, such as entering a new field. And finally, driven by internal motivation. While many children are driven by external motivators, such as punishment for being disruptive or rewards if they get good grades, adults are more internally motivated. Now these are a set of assumptions, and therefore open to debate and nuance. For example, Assumption 4 highlights practical reasons for wanting to learn, but that will not always be the case. I'm sure you can think of plenty of adults who engage in an activity for the sheer delight of learning something new, like playing a musical instrument or picking up a foreign language. Maybe you do yourself. So it's possible to find exceptions, but as far as learning in the workplace is concerned, then it seems fair to assume that this is largely linked to practical reasons. We might also question how different adults and children are on point 3, readiness to learn. There are plenty of children and teenagers who see the value of education and are very serious about and focused on learning. So these assumptions should not be seen as binary, where all these factors apply to all adults and none of them apply to any children. This is more of a sliding scale, where a group of adults in the workplace in general are likely to match more of these assumptions to a greater extent than a group of children in a school would. Building on these assumptions, Knowles proposed 4 key principles for application. These are the guidelines he recommended we should keep in mind when tasked with helping adults to learn something new or adapt to a change in the workplace. Involve them in the process. Build on existing experience, relevance and impact, and get them solving problems. Let's quickly look at each one. Involve them in the process. Adults are used to taking all sorts of decisions for themselves: what to wear, what to eat, how to travel to work, when to make that phone call. For some then, it can be a challenge to suddenly feel that you have your choices taken away, and someone else is dictating how you should learn this, how much time it should take, which sources of information are valid or preferable, and so on. There will usually be some aspects of the learning which aren't up for negotiation. That's fair enough. But there are probably ample opportunities to introduce choice and self-direction, so your colleagues feel that they are in control, or at least that it's possible to influence the process. Doing this will likely eliminate or reduce unnecessary resistance. Build on existing experience. It is rare that you are presenting something which is 100% new and has no relation whatsoever to any knowledge that any of your colleagues already have. Typically, there will be a range of experience among the learners. Knowles' advice is to acknowledge the existence of this prior experience and to build on it. However, there are pros and cons. It can be an advantage to have plenty of prior knowledge among your learners. For example, by arranging group work, you can get them learning from each other, so they're not so dependent on you or another facilitator. It can also be motivating for them to realize they are building on skills or knowledge they already have, achieving a form of mastery. But this is assuming that the prior experience is accurate and useful. There might also be experience in the room which is obsolete or inaccurate. There may be vested interests or biases. This can distort or block the incoming new learning you're trying to encourage. Either way, taking the likelihood of prior experience into account would seem prudent. Relevance and impact. Adults' readiness to learn is enhanced if they can see the why. What's in it for me? You can address this by focusing on the relevance and impact of the learning. How will learning this help them? Will they save time, improve quality, better their advancement chances? And what will the likely impact be? How far will this learning go in helping them towards these goals they might have? Taking the first two principles into account, the different levels of experience among the learners will mean they might have different answers to this as individuals. But as they want to be involved in the process, you shouldn't be worried about inviting them to think about this themselves and develop their own understanding of relevance and impact. Get them solving problems, and not just memorizing content. The training room cliché, death by PowerPoint, expresses many people's frustrations on this issue. When given responsibility to run some training for colleagues, there is a temptation to put together a series of slides with bullet points and pearls of wisdom. But just because you said it out loud in the room, or maybe read it out loud from your PowerPoint slide, that doesn't guarantee that your target group will remember these points or start to change their behavior because of them. Learning will be far more effective and memorable if the colleagues are given problems to solve and challenges to apply the new learning to, rather than just asked to take notes and memorize key learning points. These are the 4 principles that Knowles presented as key. But of course, he wasn't the only person to take an interest in the way adults learn. Others have also contributed to this field, and if this brief explanation caught your attention, you might want to engage in some self-directed learning yourself and look into other approaches and contributions on the topic. Thanks for watching.